This was a scene from the Stephen King book. It's actually a really great scene. It shows little Carrie, fascinated by sexuality, the sexuality she's observing past the fence, a sexuality that her mother will react violently to, and that will provoke Carrie to unleash the powers that become so central to our movie. But I had my doubts about the scene as the beginning of our movie. It's not that exciting or scary. It raises questions about Carrie's powers when they begin. It's supposed to be, with the period comes the powers. This would put the use of the powers and her realization about them much earlier. It would certainly make it complicated in terms of how much Margaret knows. It's hard to introduce the movie with characters and actors, no matter how good they are, that don't come back and stay in the movie. And I didn't think it was the right way to introduce Margaret White, because really all she could do was yell at the neighbor and whisk her daughter away. Those concerns were confirmed by Julianne Moore, our star. De Palma ended up shooting a version of this, and he never used it. But they wanted to try it, so I did my very best. I tried to make it look beautiful, get as active as possible and mysterious, and I tried to make Margaret deal with the neighbors in such a way that we were engaged by Margaret. We even had to explore a practical solution to the hail falling. We had these huge machines up over the lawn that would drop these fake balls onto the ground, and it was a bit disastrous. The cleanup was huge. We ended up going to a CG solution. At the end of the day, the scene looked great, but we cut it together, and it just didn't work.
Just stop it.
This is the original cut of the scene, where Billy tells Chris and her friend Tina to kiss, and they do. The sexuality with the two girls kissing was really good for the story, and a lot of fun. It let Chris be the bad girl she needs to be. It made sense of the triangle between Chris, Billy, and Tina. It revealed Chris and Billy's relationship. They dare one another. They live up to those dares. And that turns them on, and it bonds them. And having the two girls kiss served the horror genre. I mean, this is a genre where kids who have sex get punished.
Stupid.
This was a really fun scene that we used to have in. It was something that I took from the book. Just thought that the energy, the masculinity, sexuality, the danger of it was just great. And it also really brought to life how Chris and Billy thrive on daring and pushing each other. What I find fascinating is that Chris is completely obsessed with Carrie, even on a night out with Billy. Billy's exhausted by it. He wants attention from Chris, and he's not getting it. So he acts recklessly. He takes control, and he starts speeding forward. Chris is understandably terrified. She thinks that they're going to get killed. And so she tells him to slow down, but very quickly we see that it turns her on. This is their dynamic together. And so then she eggs him on, and it becomes basically a sex scene between the two of them. So it was certainly fun for them, and I think fun for the movie to have this sort of energy in the middle. As is typical with them, he goes too far, and it gets out of control. The other thing that this scene does is it allows for a level of sexuality. So up until now, he's been flirting with her by driving the car, and now finally they stop, and he thinks that she's finally done thinking about Carrie White. Maybe he's going to get laid. But she obviously is not ready for that, and so she rejects him yet again, and he pouts. There's a fun moment here where she's finally going to give him what he wants, but her obsession comes back.
Come on, baby.
At the end of the day, Chris is still going to seduce Billy, and she's going to give him sex.
You're fucked up.
But she's going to do it so that he's going to help her get back at Carrie White. After all, Carrie is still her obsession. The scene goes on too long, but it certainly has some very fun energy. It keeps our antagonists alive, and it gives us that element that we need in a horror film. Kids who have sex get punished. But also it twins Billy and Chris with Tommy and Sue. Each of these girls, Sue and Chris, are using their boyfriends to advance their objectives. Sue is using Tommy to take Carrie to the prom to help Sue get rid of the guilt that she feels for having hurt Carrie, and Chris is using Billy to help her devise a plan to hurt Carrie. It's wonderful how these two heterosexual sex scenes are being interrupted by Carrie White.
You're gonna go to your closet and you're gonna pray. You're gonna get in there, you're gonna pray for forgiveness.
No, never again, Mom!
This is a more active version of the scene where Carrie uses her powers against her mother and hangs her. This scene is a continuation of the superhero origin story and also of the story of a girl growing up and turning the tables on her mother. Margaret just keeps violating Carrie's space. She tells Carrie that she's evil. She refuses to listen to Carrie as Carrie's trying to confide to her mom that she's got these powers and she just thinks she's normal. And her mom just starts praying to excise the devil from Carrie. Margaret threatens Carrie's very existence. She threatens to silence her. So Carrie is actually forced to use her powers to shut her mother up, simply to be heard. And she's forced to shake her mother up to stop her mother from praying the exorcism prayer. I think Carrie's more violent lifting of Margaret dramatized their relationship with one another better. It's essential that Carrie use her powers in a more violent way to stop her mother from doing this in order to save herself. Having a more violent interaction between the two of them, having Carrie being forced to use her powers, having Margaret literally shaken up more violently, brings to life this mother who loves her daughter and is making her daughter crazy and repressing her, and this daughter who loves her mother and has to do what she has to do to grow up and break free.
By the Creator of the whole
I'm
universe,
going.
by Him who has the power to consign you to hell, along with your
And nothing's gonna stop me.
of the Spirit of God.
And I don't want to talk about it anymore.
This was a short, fun scene that we did that shows you just how much Billy loves Chris, how vulnerable he is to her, and how much he wants to please her. He came up with this crazy idea to kill a pig and slit its neck and take the blood and pour it on top of Carrie. But he hasn't told her that, so she's stuck in the car with his goony friends who she can't stand. It's just kind of great to see how annoying they are to her. I just love Chris and Billy. Look, ultimately we found that the scene was too slow and we wanted to get to the pig farm, so we cut it. This is the original cut of this scene, and it brings to life Chris and Carrie's desires. I have Chris up in the rafters with Billy looking down on prom, longing for what she might have had if she weren't obsessed with Carrie and carrying out this prank. It also brings to life Carrie's desires. It's her first night out. She's out with the most handsome boy in school. Of course, she's attracted to him. She's falling for him. It's a wonderful, awkward moment. It's exactly what would happen. And in many ways, the power in the story is the telekinesis, but it's also the sex that all the teenagers are experiencing. And there's something nice about the fact that Sue set this in motion and wasn't thinking it through. Send your handsome boyfriend to prom with a girl whose sexuality is emerging and they just might get attracted to each other. And as I've said before, in terms of the horror genre, it's great having kids who have desire, have sex, and get punished.
Chris, hey.
This was the original cut of this scene. It's great seeing Billy's desire for Chris's attention dramatized. He's willing to be violent to get her attention. She's distracted with her obsession with Carrie, and he steals a kiss. Chris violently pushes Billy away. He enjoys it. There's a great smile on his face. It's carnal, it's true to Chris and Billy, and it's very much in keeping with the horror genre, where kids who have sex and desire get theirs. This was a scene that we used to have in when Carrie was at prom or in the bath. Either way, it was fun to see Margaret really going for the self-mutilation, sharpening the knife, and then, of course, as Margaret is wont to do, cutting her hand open. We had a good time with it, and it was nice to show the impending threat that was Margaret before she killed her daughter. This This is a longer cut of Tina on Fire. I wanted Carrie's kills to be specific to the person, let the punishment fit the crime. Tina had been narcissistic and Chris's right hand, and she had worn a beautiful dress to prom. I loved that it would catch fire and immolate her. I wanted Tina's fire to be spectacular, excessive, gruesome, and fun, and for Carrie to be drawn into it.